these lightning strikes last night. I mean, Jesus said, as the lightning goes from the east to the west, right? So that's what it'll be like when he returns in the sky. And I want to show you the next lightning strike now. Okay, it's at 2 minutes and 13, so I just missed it there. And then we'll look at the Bible text. There's another lightning strike coming up here. And then we'll look at the next lightning strike, which is at 5:56. And there it is. And then the last one is at 9:12. So. Okay. So let me see that a bit clearer. Right. There's a bit of flooding and heavy rain with it. There was large hail predicted for those, and 31 degrees yesterday. And I was going to check this Bible account here. Jesus was saying how we need to watch for the end of the world, right? Now, watch for his return, not to be caught out. But it was interesting because he says about Jerusalem just before that Jerusalem would be trodden down of the Gentiles. Now, it was interesting because in 1967 the Gentiles didn't tread it down anymore. Jerusalem was taken by the Jewish people. Now, look at this here. Interesting, right? The Bible verse here says, for 2,300 days. Now, a day is a year. And then it says, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. Now, 1 day is a prophetical year. Ezekiel 4 verse 6, we know that. Okay. It says here, how long will it take then for the transgression of desolation, given the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? Notice that? Jesus said, as I just said, Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles. 2,300 days, remember, we just read. And here Jesus says, Jerusalem shall be trampled by the Gentiles. Now, that happened in 1967, so if you take back 2,300 days, or 2,300 day years, which is 2,300 years, it takes you back, you do the maths, to the time of who? Think about it. The Great, they called him, Alexander the Great. Interesting, he was just talking about that as well in chapter 8, about the Alexander the Great. Okay, so the next verse, there will be signs in the sun, the moon and the stars. And this version is the New King James Version. So, and just to finish off, as I say, men's hearts will be failing them with those things coming on the earth. Now, it talks about the powers of heavens being shaken, and it talks about those types of things. Now, we know there are huge, you know, big circulatory hurricanes have been striking the US recently, in recent years, and this is what's going on around the earth. We see a huge amount of flood going on and destruction, right? So the importance of watching, Jesus says, right? So you need to watch, therefore, that you don't be taken unawares. Watch for the signs, and the signs are in the heavens, where it talks about global warming. Now, God does warm the earth every now and then. In the Bible, it talks about there was much cattle in the days of Nineveh, which was the time of you know, how could we say, Jonah and the whale. last verse of the book. And basically, Jonah, God tells Jonah, because of much cattle, which is now Mosul, and so in Iraq. There was much cattle there, and because of the children, God didn't want to destroy the place, and so the people, he sent them to tell them to repent, which they did, and God didn't bring the destruction after 40 days on them. Okay, but it's interesting. I want to point out to you about Jerusalem being trod down, and if you look at the day-year things in Daniel chapter 9. Same thing, it says 70 weeks, 480 days, is 480 years when the Messiah would be cut off. And the Christ was predicted to come into the world, and that happened. And do you know what, it actually says in verse 10 of Genesis chapter 49 that there would always be in Judah a king until Shiloh comes, which is the Messiah. And there was just 4 governors when Jesus was king of the Jews. And that's what I'm saying, is that he was the last king of Israel. There's been none ever since. There you go. Come off.